Well, I'm Josh Croning, Las Sendas resident, and with me is Officer Brian Bellows with the Mesa Police Department. And today we're going to talk about e-bikes, e-motorcycles, what's the difference, what's legal, what's not legal. We all have a lot of questions about these, so he's here to give us some answers and educate us a little bit on this topic. So before we just dive into it, it's good to get to know people that we meet in our community.
Absolutely.
So where'd you grow up?
So I grew up here in Mesa. I actually lived here until I was 26.
Okay.
Born and raised mostly on the west side of town. Went to Westwood High School.
Okay.
Graduated 2010.
Okay, cool. Did you ever, so whenever I meet people that grew up in Mesa, they talk about coming to this part of town and like messing around in the mountains over here and before it was a neighborhood, you know?
So because I was so far west, I don't
Okay.
think we usually went like Riverview area, but I know the
Okay.
kids, like the Mountain View kids and Red Mountain kids, they talked a lot about Las Sendas. I didn't really know where Las Sendas was until I was a cop. So
Okay.
I never made it out quite this far when I was younger.
Okay. Well, it's a cool spot. You know, people who live here really appreciate the location, and I travel a lot for work, and I really appreciate how pretty this community is in this part of town. You know,
Absolutely.
It's a cool spot. And then how long have you worked for Mesa PD?
So I've been a cop for 12 years with Mesa. Most of my time has been patrol,
Okay.
about 9 years on patrol. And then I moved into where I'm at now, which is called community action,
Okay.
about 3 years ago.
So what does that mean? What's that term, community action? What's your position?
So we're attached to our street crimes division. We
Okay.
I joke around and say that we're kind of that one drawer in your house that you put things you're not sure what to do with. But really what we do is we handle the issues that are important to specific individual communities. So our street crimes divisions typically are looking at what we see as a department needs to be handled, trending crimes, things like that, and they're tackling those issues. We work directly with community leaders and kind of find out, hey, what's troubling this specific community, and we work in that direction.
Okay, so e-motorcycles, you know, if you're on social media, you see a lot of posts with these like e-motos doing all kinds of everything, you know. I mean, sometimes they're transportation, sometimes kids are jumping streets with them, you know, crazy stuff. And different communities put up different levels of posts, I guess. Like Gilbert, that community of Gilbert, they put up a lot of posts about e-bike problems and issues with I keep saying e-bike, but it's really the e-motorcycles that are the culprit usually, right?
Generally,
problems. Okay, so what do you see in Mesa as like a city as a whole as far as e-motorcycle issues?
We haven't been dealing with this issue as long as other jurisdictions have. California was kind of ground zero.
Yeah.
The e-motos, as we know them now, they've been around, Surons, Talarias, they've been around for almost 10 years, but they were relatively, I don't want to say rare, but there just weren't that many of them on the roadway until the last few years. We started seeing issues here in Mesa in 2023, and these issues are actually mostly coming out of Gilbert. We were getting complaints from the communities around the Superstition Golf Course about kids riding up through the golf course, causing damage to the course, harassing employees, going back. And that issue at that time was solved by knocking on a few doors, talking to parents, and the issue kind of went away. But then it continued to grow through 2024 or end 23, 24. And then probably the end of 24 and beginning of 25, we started getting videos of groups of 20 to 50 riders on various machines taking over roadways down near Eastmark, down south. And that's what really prompted us to say, okay, we need to figure out exactly how we're going to address this issue.
Because it is an issue, you know, that many riders, I've seen videos of that. They go through stoplights, you know, they're all over the road, kind of driving right at cars. And I mean, it's super dangerous. So I'm a parent. I've got two boys. My boys are 14 and 16. You know, 16-year-old's got a car. He doesn't care about e-motorcycles anymore. But the 14-year-old, we got him an e-bike, and it's an e-bike. So if you're an expert at this, we got him a Super 73. So it has pedals. It goes 25 miles an hour, maybe. Is that breaking any laws?
So per Mesa City Code, you are supposed to be 16 years old to ride any e-bike or e-scooter, really anything electric.
Okay.
It is a secondary violation, and what that means
Okay.
is we can't stop somebody just because they look like they're 14 and they're on an e-bike, or they look like they're 12 and they're on an e-bike.
Okay.
We have to witness them commit some other type of infraction to make that stop. A seatbelt violation is also a secondary violation. So we can't pull somebody over just because they're not wearing a seatbelt, but if we pulled them over for something else, then they could potentially be ticketed for not wearing a seatbelt.
Boy, I didn't know that the scooters, so an electric scooter of any kind, you have to be 16 to ride it.
To ride it on any public sidewalks or public spaces.
Sidewalk or road, okay.
Yeah.
So if you're under 16, you should be riding a bicycle without a motor.
Human powered transportation is the safest bet. That being said, it's just like you said, the vast majority of kids, when they hit 16, they can get a car. So they don't really care as much anymore. So
why would I want that?
Yeah, what we're seeing for the most part is the average age of our riders are like 12 to 15.
12-year-old, that's still a little kid.
Yeah,
If they've got an e-motorcycle, that's a lot of responsibility for a 12-year-old.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the classes, because I know there's classes of e-bikes, and then are there classes of e-motorcycles, or if it doesn't have pedals, it's not legal?
No, and that's, everyone kind of thought the law changed. The law never really changed. The law has basically always said if it has a seat, saddle, and a motor, and less than 3 wheels on the ground, it's a motorcycle.
Okay.
What the law says now is that that's a motorcycle unless it is a class 1, 2, or 3 electric bicycle or a moped or an electric scooter. So the way you got to think about it is anything that has 2 wheels and a motor, unless it falls under one of those exceptions, it's a motorcycle.
So, okay, what kind of trouble can kids and or parents get into? I mean, like you said, if they're just riding on the sidewalk or the road, not causing problems, probably not going to get pulled over. But what can they get in trouble for? Why would they get stopped, and what kind of trouble can you get in?
So, again, this issue kind of grew over a long period of time, and for a long time, officers didn't even know what they were looking at. So they would see a Sur-Ron or a Talaria or a Tudio or any number of these other electric machines going down the road, and we weren't really doing anything about it because our average patrol officer, they didn't, they're like, well, it's an e-bike. Because again, they didn't have that information at the time because we hadn't dug that deep into it yet.
Okay.
Now we are primarily focusing our enforcement on the electric motorcycle. So when I say motorcycle, it's a motorcycle. And the easiest way to think about it is if it falls under that category of motorcycle, think about if it was a big Harley Davidson bagger. If you couldn't, you'd have to have everything, all of the same requirements to ride that small electric motorcycle as you would the Harley. Really? So motorcycle license, helmet if you're under 18, insurance, registration, can only be ridden on the road, can't be in the sidewalks, can't be in the parks. All of those same requirements apply. Now, just e-bikes in and of themselves, class 1, 2s, and 3s, generally speaking, so we do enforcement operations now targeting these things to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. But generally speaking, again, we understand that these aren't going away. These are part of our country. They're here to stay. They're the way a lot of people get to work, get to school. And we're not trying to suppress the legal usage of them. We're just trying to make sure that people are being safe. So generally, if we observe unsafe behavior, a lot of times we do with juveniles, riding double, riding in the roadway when they're not supposed to, riding the wrong way in the roadway, sidewalk, blowing past pedestrians, things like that. That's usually where you're going to draw police attention.
And that's a tricky one because they can just take off. Like, are you pretty successful stopping these kids?
So with the electric motorcycles, they're very capable machines. They're quiet. They can go over basically any terrain. What we've learned really quickly when we began our enforcement operations is that having helicopter support was very valuable. So they do take off, but we do use drones, helicopters, and our real-time crime center. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's essentially detectives that are tied into all of our active cameras in the city. We can use that to track where they're going.
Wow.
Now,
okay.
That being, and I said I talk about this for a long time, but that being said, we understand that most of the kids riding these things, the electric motorcycles, most of the kids out there, getting reckless on them, they're not bad kids. They're kids that are just trying to have fun and don't understand the reality of what they're doing. So we, as a police department, we're very, when it comes to like pursuing them, chasing them, things like that, we try to take a reasonable approach with it. We don't, we're not going to chase every single group of kids that runs off, because they could, blow through a red light, get hit, crash. There's a lot of things that could happen. So we try to go off of each individual situation and what's going on at the time.
Okay. So let's say group of kids doing wheelies, tearing up landscaping, you successfully stop them. What happens then to the kids and the parents and the e-motorcycle?
So what we're doing right now, is we are, for the time being, so we've kind of started with an education first approach with this, because most of our officers didn't know the difference, let alone our community. Okay. And so we've started with an education first approach. And for the time being, when we pull these machines over, we're usually calling parents. Parents have to come pick up the machine, because we can't allow the child, to get an unlicensed rider, to get back on a motorcycle and leave. It's not safe. It's not legal. So we're having the parents come and pick the bikes up. Depending on the type of interaction that they're having, depending on what they've done, they may get tickets. Per Arizona law, we can and will be impounding the machines for 20 days because the riders are not licensed. That being said, we've had issues. There's a specific statute, it's ARS 283511, that lets us impound the machines. But to give the machines back, they have to satisfy the requirements of a different law that says you have to prove ownership. So if you get your actual motorcycle towed, you go down to the tow yard, you show them your registration, your license, they give you your motorcycle back. When we take these machines, because they're motorcycles, the tow yard will not give them back unless you can show that registration or some other ownership documentation. And the vast majority of our owners can't show that. So what we were seeing, initially we started impounding quite a few of them, and what we were seeing is that tow yards just wouldn't give them back. It was creating a major hassle. It was creating a financial burden that was not in line with what we were trying to do. So we've slowed that down. It hasn't gone away completely, but it's more of a case-by-case situation versus we just take everything.
Wow. And that's not necessarily you in the tow yard holding this thing just for fun. It's liability issues for the tow yard giving something that might not be like to the rightful owner.
Yeah, exactly. They can't show that this person owns it. It has either a VIN or a serial number on it. They can't prove ownership. And so per Arizona law, they're supposed to have that documentation to release it back.
And this whole time you're racking up fees. For storage.
Yeah.
They charge you for that. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's on average about $50 a day.
Wow. Well, what haven't I asked you that you want to tell us about these e-bikes and e-motorcycles? Like I've learned a lot in just this last 10 minutes or whatever we've been talking.
Yeah, we could talk about it for a long time. I'm trying to keep the information relevant, but common sense dictates. One thing I try to tell parents is, before you ask if it's legal, just ask if it's safe. If it's not safe, it's probably not legal. The reality is the dividing difference between e-bikes or any bikes and motorcycles is speed. Our motorcycles, our electric motorcycles, on average top out at 50 miles an hour, 40 to 50 miles an hour.
That's really fast.
Which is, and when we did our education kind of rounds on this, we talk about kinetic energy. That is a lot of kinetic energy being created by somebody who does not, with our kids that don't understand the rules of the road. They don't understand traffic patterns. They don't know when, a car is supposed to yield, when they're supposed to yield. And they're going so fast that those mistakes, if they make them on a bicycle, you fall down, you get hurt, you get scraped up, you might break a bone or two. But if you're going 40, 50 miles an hour, our consequences are a lot more serious.
I almost hate to ask, but around Mesa, I personally know families with these e-motorcycles, and some of them, I know one of them's broken a collarbone and probably another collarbone, but I would imagine there's more catastrophic accidents with these in and around Mesa with a city this size.
We've had several major injury accidents. We, knock on wood, have not had a documented fatality involving an electric motorcycle. That being said, reporting guidelines are questionable because, again, for up until the last 2 years, we didn't really recognize what these were, what exactly they were, how to document them. So it could have been that we had other issues in the past, but they were just tagged under a generic motorcycle or a generic dirt bike term instead of being tagged as a electric motorcycle or an e-ride or a Sur-Ron. We have had fatalities involving kids on dirt bikes in the last couple of years, just regular gas-powered dirt bikes.
Yeah, they seem more dangerous because they're loud, but they're pretty similar machines.
Right? So the electric motorcycles, like this, again, Sur-Ron, Talaria, e-ride, they typically have a lot more torque than even like a 450 dirt bike. Talking about as much torque as like a half-ton truck, a lot of them do, that's why they do the wheelies, because it's so easy to just pop that front end up. And that's just the nature of the electric motor.
And that's what I think of when I see these kids on them. Safety is the main concern, and if they're on a sidewalk or even in the bike lane, Las Sendas has a big loop with bike lanes, if they're in the bike lane going 40 miles an hour and you're pulling out of your enclave and you look and you look and you look, I mean, they're covering a lot of ground really fast. It's hard to even see them.
Yeah, we had an incident last year, 2020, end of 24, beginning of 25, where we had a juvenile who's riding the wrong way in the bike lane, 40, 45 miles an hour. And that exact same thing happened. A truck pulled out to turn right. They looked left. Car was, the bike was coming the wrong way, so it was coming from the right. And luckily, the truck turned just in time, so he hit at a glancing impact.
He still hit him.
He still, I think, broke a femur, but it probably would have been significantly worse if the truck had been straight on. But it's
a tricky one with who's at fault. Like, you got an underage kid on something he's not supposed to be doing, and they hit a vehicle.
Yeah.
I don't know whose liability that is. What happens?
There's times we see an element of fault with both parties.
Yeah.
But again, as a driver, when you see, because a lot of these machines, they have a small profile too. They're quiet, so they don't sound like a motorcycle coming down the road or like a dirt bike. So somebody turns and looks and they see what they believe is a bicycle and they expect it to be going bicycle speeds.
Yeah.
And they just glance. Yeah, they're your mind's telling you it's going 15 miles an hour, but it's going 50. So, and then they pull out, and that's where we have our accidents.
Some of them don't have lights on them either.
Like, a lot of them don't.
I already told you I bought my kid the Super 73, but I bought it because it has a big headlight. It's super bright.
Yeah.
And it's also got a tail light where if he hits the brakes, the tail light comes on. But, probably should have just bought him a normal bicycle.
Yeah. It's one of those things where we're trying to, the law, this is a situation where technology has outpaced the law in a major way.
Yep.
And so we're, every day trying to kind of figure out the best way to move forward, if we need to change laws, how we need to adjust things. Again, we recognize that most of our riders are younger. We've looked into that aspect of it too, but at this time, you're supposed to be 16 to ride anything that's motorized or electric on public spaces.
You might as well get a car, but not everyone can buy a car. So that's an interesting. Can you license a Sur-Ron as a motorcycle and ride it on the road?
Technically, yes.
Okay.
So that's actually a pretty deep rabbit hole, but to sum it up really quickly, most of these machines are imported.
Okay.
And there are legitimate importers that are authorized to bring them in, that they're declared properly at customs as motor vehicles. And when you buy it from that distributor, you get a manufacturer certificate of origin. You can take it to the DMV, you can get it registered. There are legitimate chains by which these come over from overseas, but there are a lot more illegitimate chains where they're being imported as bicycle parts or e-bikes or any number of things where they bypass customs without being tagged as a motorcycle. And because of that, they show up with absolutely no paper trail. So you have a motorcycle, but you don't have any kind of documentation to actually go and get it registered. So they're what we call gray market vehicles. Again, it's kind of a rabbit hole. That's something we're actively working on to try to figure out a legal path of legitimate ownership for those machines, because there's a lot of them on the road.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and we'll wrap up soon. I know you've got stuff to do. I'm an insurance adjuster, and I just had a pretty large house fire claim, and it was started by an e-bike. Because you mentioned some of them are, they're mass produced in China, sent over here, not UL certified. And this thing was sitting in their living room, just combusted. Battery just started on fire while they were charging it. And those fires do a ton of damage. So people with these e-bikes in their garage, I mean, don't leave them plugged in overnight. E-motos, I'm sure those same thing. Like they're just a hazard all around. But is there anything else you wanted to tell us about?
I think we covered a lot of it. I'm sure that we could go down the rabbit hole of all the different city codes and laws.
I think we got the major ones. Yeah, 16 is kind of that age that you have to be.
16, common sense. They're not supposed to be on the sidewalk. So e-bikes, when they're under operation or under electric power, are not supposed to be on the sidewalks. Okay. So there's a lot, but I think we covered most of it.
Well, that helps. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
It's great to meet you.
Absolutely.
Nice
Thank
to
you.
meet
You
one
too.
of our police officers.